The Paul Goldschmidt era has officially come to an end in St. Louis. Was his time with the team a success or was it a failure? This is Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans. I'm JD Hafford, and I'm your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter X at JD Sports Radio. You can also follow the podcast at LO_Cardinals. I want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. Stop on by if you haven't already. Like, subscribe, and comment if this is the sort of content that you are into, because this is a show that serves Cardinal Nation and gives the best fans in baseball all of the info about the birds on the bat. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So before we get started today, I do want to apologize for being a little bit MIA recently. Unfortunately, we had a death in the family. So my time and energy has been more involved with that than anything else going on in my life right now. So unfortunately, the podcast had to take a bit of a back seat for about a week now. So I'm sure you've noticed, if you're an everydayer, that like, where is this guy? What's he been doing? So sadly, that's what's been going on. But I appreciate your patience, and I thank you guys for supporting the channel and the podcast in general. But we're back and we're moving forward. Life moves on, right? So we've had a few developments since our last episode. Big news was something that I guess really doesn't involve the Cardinals so much, but instead, I guess what we can say is a former Cardinal, 2022 NL MVP Paul Goldschmidt is now a New York Yankee, signing a one-year $12.5 million deal to wear the pinstripes next year as the Yankees try to find a way to make up for the production that they lost with Juan Soto signing with the New York Mets instead. Now, I've mentioned it time and time again, everydayers, you'll know this, that moving on from Goldie, in my opinion, was the right move for the Cardinals. If you take his name away from the statistics and you just look at the numbers, there is not a single stat over the last couple years that would excite you and want you to bring back that particular player and bring him back into the fold for a team that has missed the playoffs the last two seasons. Okay? You would look at that position and go, we need to do something here. We need to fix this. There needs to be an upgrade. Something's going on. Take his name away, and there's not much going on there that is all that impressive. In 2023, it hit 268, 363, 447 slash line, 25 home runs, 80 RBIs, 161 strikeouts, the OPS plus 120, but that was 57 points lower than the previous year when he won that NL MVP, which we knew he was going to regress some, right? But 57 points lower, that's a major drop in production. Just across the board, everything went down. And, his final month, and I remember pointing this out, his final month in that MVP season, it wasn't a really strong month for Paul Goldschmidt. Remember, him and Nolan Arenado struggled in that final month of the season leading into the playoffs, and then they didn't do anything in the playoffs against the Phillies. His final month for Goldie, 245, 716 OPS, 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts against the Phillies in the playoffs there. So the writing was kind of on the wall there, although being optimistic, which is the kind of guy I normally am, you look at it, you're like, okay, so we went cold at the end of the year. He's going to be fine. We're moving forward. I mean, this is the guy that just was, competing for a triple crown for most of 2022. But it did, when you go back and you look at it, it's kind of similar to what happened to Adam Wainwright. Adam Wainwright, his numbers fell off a cliff in his last month. And then you saw the disaster that was his final season in Major League Baseball, outside of the excitement of him trying to win his 200th game. But everything else was bad, right? We were all like, oh my gosh, this is so sad watching Waino. And it was kind of sad watching Goldie this year, wasn't it? I mean, outside of being upset because you're like, God, every time he comes up, he doesn't do anything. At the same point, you're like, man, it sucks watching somebody who's been so good for so long and has represented the Cardinals so well over his tenure struggle as bad as he did. Last year, he gets the lowest numbers of his career over a full season. He hits just 245, lowest of his career. 22 home runs, lowest in a full season other than his rookie year when he hit 19 home runs. That was in 2014, but he only played in 109 games that season. The 302 OBP, lowest ever. 414 slugging, lowest ever. OPS, 716, just like the final month of that MVP year, lowest of his career. OPS plus falls below league average. He dips down to under 100 with a 98 OPS plus. He grounded into 20 double plays. So when he wasn't striking out, he was hitting into double plays. That was the second most double plays he's grounded into in his career. The strikeouts were up 173 times, tied for the most in one season of his career. He got better in the second half because it was much worse in the first half. He did get better in the second half, but not nearly enough for me to believe that there was enough in the tank for Goldie to necessitate any sort of contract extension. And I know that was the big fear among people last year, was that they're still going to try to sign him, aren't they? Just because he's Paul Goldschmidt. They're going to go down this path still, aren't they? And the Cardinals did not. They're like, no. We're gonna wash our hands of this. We're moving on, moving in a different direction. We're going younger. We're going cheaper. And it's okay because this is what happens in life. You know, if you're not using PEDs, your numbers are going to tail off as you get older. That's just the nature of the beast. And Goldie is 37, and this is just what happens. And that's okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You know, the contract, it ends as he's going down. And that's kind of, sure, if you could end after 2022 on the high note and then move on and get somebody and that had more production over the last 2 years, sure, of course. But this is kind of what you want to happen when you sign guys to longer term deals, is like you get almost all of it to be really good. And then it's going to tail off at the end to a point where you don't have to re-sign him anymore. So that's how he was on the field. The man off the field will be missed dearly. Okay, you may not miss his production on the field, although I'll miss watching Paul Goldschmidt run the bases. One of my favorite things that he does, man. Always when he kicks it into that next gear, always loved it. But the guy off the field will be missed dearly, right? He has been a big part of the clubhouse, of the organization, in the community. They genuinely don't get much better than Paul Goldschmidt and how he's been throughout his career with the Diamondbacks and with the Cardinals. I'm sure he'll be a smash hit. People will love him as a person with the Yankees, although he's going to have to shave. Like, he won't get to have that gray shadow that he's been sporting as a Cardinal the last couple of years. He's going to have to clean it up a little bit. But, there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about Paul Goldschmidt in a Cardinals uniform. But when you look back on it, was it a success or was it a failure having Paul Goldschmidt on this team? We're going to discuss that next on Locked On Cardinals. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide during their cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, you get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. I am going to be dead honest with you. My mom sent me the Omaha Steaks package. She texted me the other day. She goes, I feel like you would enjoy this, so I sent you something. Outside on my porch is the Omaha Steaks big white cooler with all the stuff inside of it. Just tons of stuff. Had to put them all in the freezer, so the freezer is packed right now. Legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more. You can save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply. I'm going to tear into them, and I hope you do too. So make sure you check that out at omahasteaks.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. You can leave your comments on YouTube as well as on Twitter X anytime you want. Your feedback is always welcome and encouraged. So the trade that brought Paul Goldschmidt to the Cardinals, my opinion, success or failure, I'm going to lean towards the success side. And I'm going to tell you why. First off, what you gave up to get Paul Goldschmidt, you can live with that, right? You gave up Carson Kelly, who at the time was one of the top catching prospects in all of baseball. Was blocked by Yachty, so you're not going to push Yachty out so that Carson Kelly can play. And if you go and look, I mean, he hasn't exactly lived up to expectations. I think people thought he was going to be better than his career has been thus far. He's now on his 5th Major League team. You're going to see him a few times this year because he signed with the Chicago Cubs, 2-year deal with the Cubbies. And then you also gave up former first-round pick Luke Weaver, who finally here in 2024 found his niche in the big leagues as a reliever with the New York Yankees, Paul Goldschmidt's team now. But outside of this year, Weaver's been, a journeyman pitcher. Like, he's been bouncing around for a while. Went from Cardinals to the Diamondbacks, Royals, Reds, Mariners, and then finally in New York where he's found a spot in that bullpen with the Yankees. So, that was cool. You don't like to see somebody just struggle his whole career, after being a first-round pick. So I thought it was neat watching him in the playoffs. I was happy for Luke. The downside of the Paul Goldschmidt trade talk would be that the Cardinals never won a World Series with Goldie. But outside of the last 2 years, been a pretty successful run overall. They've got 4 postseason appearances. Went to the NLCS 2019, although they got their tails kicked by the Washington Nationals. You had a Gold Glove for Goldie in 2021, obviously the MVP in 2022. The ultimate goal, end of the day, obviously to win the trophy, right? You want to be the last team standing, but a lot of organizations would absolutely kill for the type of success that the Cardinals have sustained over the years. And Goldie was a big part of that during his 6 seasons in St. Louis. In an article from Katie Wu at The Athletic, she had some of the quotes with Goldie talking about his time in St. Louis. Might surprise you a little bit that he said the MVP season is the one that he's most disappointed in. He said, thinking back to 2022, I really thought we had a good chance. As great as it was individually and as a team, I would say that was probably the most disappointing year of my career as well, the way it ended. I felt like that was such a great chance. If we could have gone on a run in the playoffs, we had a chance to win it all. That one I probably took the hardest, even though now you're going to look at it on paper 2 years later and say, oh, that was such an amazing year. And there were some great memories. Albert, myself, probably my best individual year. It's kind of ironic. That was also the most disappointing, which tells you a little something about the man that Paul Goldschmidt is. I mean, it was never about individual accolades. It was always team, team, team. And as long as he was doing his part to help the team win, life was good. And the last 2 seasons, more specifically last year, you could see it on his face and in his body language how disappointed he was when he wouldn't come through for his teammates and for the fans and for this organization. Like, it hurt him. Like, you could see it. And it was nice when you saw something good happen for Paul Goldschmidt this past year, and you saw some excitement and emotion and some happiness coming out of him, but it wasn't a lot. The numbers dipped dramatically, just like the Cardinals' winning percentage. And, it's easy to point a finger at Paul Goldschmidt because he was one of the main reasons why the team faltered, because they were relying on him to help carry the offensive load along with guys like Nolan Arenado and Wilson Contreras the last 2 years. And just plain and simple, it didn't happen. He wasn't up to where the standard for Paul Goldschmidt was expected to be. Same thing for Nolan Arenado. Wilson Contreras, obviously the injuries. There was 2 of them this year that cut into Wilson Contreras' season, which didn't help any. But, the lack of production from both him and Arenado is basically what's putting an end to the Goldonado era of Cardinal baseball. If both of them had solid seasons, I'm not saying they had to be MVP-like stuff from 2022, but just solid seasons in general, I don't know if we're talking about this. But because they struggled as badly as they did, and despite that, the Cardinals were still able to have a winning record this year, I think that's why the team's like, got to pull the plug. I'm not going to extend you. There's no point in keeping the other guy. If you're not going to be around, we might as well, go youth throughout. So Goldie, it was as disappointed as anybody about what happened this past season for him individually. Some more quotes from the story from Katie Wu at The Athletic. It's frustrating, disappointing, whatever negative emotion, looking back and knowing a percentage of this is my fault. The way I played for a large majority of the season, I'm going to look back and feel like I could have played better the first 4 or 5 months. Maybe we would have won some of those games. This is probably the worst I performed on the field in my career. That was disappointing. A good bit of that burden was on me. If I could have played how I believe I'm capable of playing, we could have won more games and maybe this might have turned out differently. There are no excuses. That's the truth. I wish the results were different, but you can't go back and change that. I have always tried to show up, play hard, and try to help us win and do the best I could, even though it wasn't nearly good enough for us this year. Again, you can just sense the pain. I feel like he's a little bit embarrassed that it ended this way. He's obviously disappointed. And it's sad as a fan, too, because when you know that you're going to move on from a certain player, you know how we do it at Busch Stadium. We want to give the guy a standing ovation and show him the love and support that, that he's been a part of this family that we call the St. Louis Cardinals. And we didn't get to do that for Paul Goldschmidt, even though he deserved it. And I think everybody would have stood and applauded him and been like, thank you very much for your 6 years with us. Didn't get a chance to do that. Nolan Arenado, if he gets traded this offseason, which seems more and more likely, we won't get to give him a send-off like that either. They'll be wearing different uniforms if they come back to Busch Stadium next time. And it'll be, a standing ovation, get tip of the cap at home plate or whatever, but it's not the same. It's, you want to be able to treat them better than that, especially guys like this. So it's unfortunate. And you hear those quotes from him and it's hard to be upset at him, right? It's not like he didn't try hard or he didn't put in the work. I mean, how many times did we hear during telecasts the team talking about how much extra work Paul Goldschmidt is doing in the cages before the game, studying, trying to figure something out, anything, putting in the time to get better results for himself and the team. It was never a lack of effort. And I don't think anybody ever thought it was, that he was just skating by behind the scenes. It's just Father Time caught up with them and things just did not work out here at the end. And we wish him well in New York. I hope he's very successful. But I do find it a little amusing. I will say this. I find it a little amusing that the Yankees have decided to transition from an old NL Central guy in Anthony Rizzo at first base to an older NL Central guy in Paul Goldschmidt instead of I truly thought they were going to buck up and get Pete Alonso. I really did, especially after the Mets stole Juan Soto. I was like, oh, they're going to go after Pete Alonso. This is going to be hilarious. And nothing so far. It's kind of hard to believe that Alonso was still just floating around out there. He could end up back with the Mets. That's what a lot of the rumors are right now, is he could end up in New York just with the Mets again and teaming up with Juan Soto instead. Wouldn't that be something? There's some talk about the Yankees possibly trying to get Nolan Arenado at third base as well to go along with Goldie, which might open up some things, like because Goldie signed with the Yankees, because the Yankees weren't on that list that we got from John Denton of teams that Nolan Arenado wanted to go to. And but maybe because Goldie's there and they're boys, they've been good friends for a long time, maybe he'd be more open to signing with the Yankees now and getting traded to the Yankees now that Goldie is there. So I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see what happens there. Nothing really new to report. Still kind of hung up on that Alex Bregman stuff is slowing things down. But as far as other things that have gone on around the league, there's been a lot of movement with starting pitchers recently. So we're going to get into that. There was a major trade in the NL East, so I want to talk about that stuff coming up next on Locked On Cardinals. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. We got Monday Night Football tonight as my Packers are at home against the New Orleans Saints, who I don't even know who's on their offense, really. I know they don't have Alvin Kamara. They don't have Derek Carr. They don't have Taysom Hill. They don't have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Who else was in there on their team for fantasy purposes? They're all gone. None of them are on there right now. And I mean, come on, Packers. Come on, Packers. You're my boys. There's got to be a significant victory here with half their offense missing. Packers are 14.5-point favorites last time I checked at FanDuel. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game that something's going to happen, Josh Jacobs obviously has been huge for the Packers this year. You get a hunch in the middle of the game and you think he's going to go off, you can check out live stats, live play-by-play, and so much more right there on the same page where you can place your bet. So it's really convenient. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you again for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully is your host, brings you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on all of the offseason shenanigans in Major League Baseball. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. So big moves by the Phillies. That was the big trade that has most recently happened. The rich get richer. Yes, they do. It's a common theme this offseason in MLB. The Phillies acquired left-hander Jesus Luzardo and a minor leaguer from the Marlins in exchange for their number 4 and number 23 prospects. Luzardo, arbitration eligible. He's under team control through 2026. It's quite a rotation in Philadelphia if they stay healthy. You got Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, and now you throw in Jesus Luzardo. They got one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, and Andrew Painter, who is coming up, and it will probably be a part of this rotation at some point. So Phillies, do you need Nolan Arenado to complete your puzzle? I feel like that would still be a good fit. But Luzardo, only 27 years old. We've talked a lot about him here on Locked On Cardinals because he's a guy that, I have wanted the Cardinals to go out and get. Last season, not so good. Recorded a 5 ERA over 12 starts before his season came to an end. He had a lumbar stress fracture. He also had some elbow issues last year. He's dealt with injuries a lot over his years, along with his time in Oakland and then with Miami. But 2023, he was really, really good. Remember, he made 32 starts, 3.58 ERA, 208 strikeouts over 178 2/3 innings for Miami. Just seemed like it would be a good fit for the Cardinals. Didn't make a move. I don't know what Miami was asking for at the time. But you see, he still got a 4th and a 23rd prospect back out of their top 25, even though he had a terrible year. And in hindsight, you're glad the Cardinals didn't make that move because he wasn't any good. He was hurt most of this season. But if he becomes more like that 2023 guy again, then that's one heck of a starting rotation with a mix of righties and lefties for Philly. We still haven't heard much on the trading of Alec Boehm or their interest in Nolan Arenado at all. Again, Alex Bregman kind of holding up the third base market at the time because people are still wondering where Bregman's going to sign. So another rich team that added sort of is the Mets, who ended up re-signing one of their own, Sean Manaea, to a 3-year deal worth $75 million. Had a fantastic year last year. Career high in innings, career best ERA at 3.47. And if you remember when he pitched against the Cardinals, I remember them talking about he made an adjustment and he lowered his arm angle, the arm slot that he was throwing from. Apparently was taking some notes off of watching Chris Sale, who just won the Cy Young in Atlanta, and decided, look, I'm going to try that, which sometimes can be very dangerous for a pitcher because you start moving where your arm slot is used to and the muscles are used to. And sometimes it doesn't work out. You do a little damage to your arm, but he made that adjustment, and it worked out beautifully for him. He'll join the Mets rotation, who not as good as the Phillies, but still some significant names here. Kodai Senga, hurt all year last year, basically. Clay Holmes is there now. Frankie Montas, Dave Peterson, Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill, Paul Blackburn is a guy that I've been a fan of for a long time. So a pretty good stable of arms. They got a lot of depth there. And from what I read, they want to implement a 6-man rotation this year. So it's good. It's always good to have more arms than not enough, right? We've learned that the hard way in St. Louis. So good re-signing by the Mets there. That made a lot of sense. How about this one? A couple of years ago, remember Walker Buehler? I mean, his name was mentioned among the top arms in the league. Like, he was an ace with the Dodgers, but a slew of injuries has caused him to miss nearly 2 years. He had to have a second Tommy John surgery. And we're wondering if Walker Buehler was going to be the same guy he was before all of this. And it didn't look like he was. 75 in the third innings last year. He had a 5.38 ERA, 18.6% strikeout rate, 8.1% walk rate, 1.91 home runs per 9 rate. The fastball velocity, it was back to where he was at in 2021 and 2022, but people weren't swinging and missing. People weren't chasing, and it was a struggle for Walker Buehler last year. But then get to the postseason, and, all eyes are on the postseason, and if you do something good, teams are going to take notice, and he did very well with the Dodgers during their title run. He had a 3.60 ERA. He struck out 13 hitters in 15 innings. He had that really good outing in Game 3 where he threw 5 shutout innings, struck out 5, and then you saw him at the end of the game in the final game, the 1-2-3-9 to secure the title. Apparently, that was all Boston had to see, because the Red Sox have given the 30-year-old a 1-year, $21.05 million deal along with incentives. Think about this for a moment, all right? And I know his name is Walker Buehler, but again, I'm going to ask you to take his name away, okay? We're talking about a guy who hasn't hardly pitched in 2 years, and this past year was 1-6 with a 5.38 ERA, getting a $21 million prove-it deal. Wow. $21 million at 1 win last year. 1 win. That's crazy to me, especially when you got people like Corbin Burns out there, Jack Flaherty, Jose Quintana, Max Scherzer, guys who haven't been hurt last year. Well, I guess Scherzer was out a little bit, wasn't he? But still, I'm just saying, I feel like I would be putting those funds towards somebody else. This is like a lottery ticket. If he's good, cool. But if he's not, then what a waste. And the chances of him not being good, I think, are far higher than for him to be really good and be the Walker Buehler of old next year. So that's a little shocking to me. That's a lot of money for that. 1-year prove-it deal, $21 million. Wow. And I think about that, and then I think about, all right, 1-year deals. What's Eric Fetty and Steven Matz worth then for the Cardinals? Like, if 1-6, 5.38 guy who hasn't thrown hardly in 2 years until this past season, what are Eric Fetty and Steven Matz worth? Specifically Fetty, who's on that 1-year deal, $7.5 million. Matz, I get it. He's hurt a lot too. I understand that one, but I don't know. I'm a little shocked that more people haven't called on these guys. Maybe they have called about them, and we just haven't heard about it yet because teams are waiting on free agent signings. I don't know. But I thought that was some pretty significant news there. And, of course, I want to close things out here today. Really sad to hear about the passing of Rickey Henderson, greatest leadoff hitter of all time, in my opinion, certainly during since I've been alive. Stole an MLB record, 1,406 bases. He broke Lou Brock's record back in 1991. He's like 400 and something past Lou. Like, nobody's ever going to catch him, dude. Nobody has hit more home runs to lead off a game than Henderson, who has opened up a contest with a home run 81 times, 2,295 runs scored over 25 years of playing Major League Baseball. Ty Cobb second on that one. No one's going to catch that. Barry Bonds owns the all-time walks record with 2,558, but that includes 688 intentional walks. If you don't count the intentionals and just go unintentional walks, Rickey Henderson has 2,129, which is 259 ahead of Barry Bonds. Like, just disgusting numbers. And he was so much fun to watch as a kid. I remember the neon batting gloves, the bright green neon batting gloves that he wore in the 90s. He always had the swagger where he's doing this, like pulling on his shirt after the home runs, and he's got the little shimmy when he would go down the line. He just had a fun personality. Some people just call it cockiness. I thought it was fun. I was like, look at this guy. But he had the talent to back it up. He wasn't some joke, the speed power combination was elite. He had that great eye at the plate, obviously, to get all those walks. It's just, my thing was, it was hard to believe that he played on so many teams over his entire career. 11, I think, is what he finished up with. But I'll always remember him, and most people will remember him as an Oakland A. I do have one quick story when the Cardinals and the Padres played in the playoffs. This was back in 1996, and it was the only year my family ever got season tickets to the Cardinals. They were like, we're going to buck up this year. They were excited about La Russa and stuff, and they were like, let's get season tickets. So we were in left field at the Old Busch Stadium, right above, I don't know, I got about 10 rows up there in left field. So a lot of home runs came our way and stuff. But and I remember Rickey Henderson, and he would be in left field, and everybody's always chanting Rickey's name. They're all taunting him and stuff like that. And he would play along and just toy with the crowd, and it was just a lot of fun to watch. I remember him once. He was like, they were giving him some crap, and I remember he had his glove and he hit it from like everybody else, and then he put his finger and like flicked off the crowd, and it was just like laughing about it. And everybody was having fun with it. And I know, not cool to give the bird, but it was funny. It was funny to us. Like, he was acting like a little kid. But I remember that team. It was like him and Steve Finley, Ken Caminiti, Tony Gwynn was on that team. Obviously, Trevor Hoffman was there. And Cardinals swept that series. They were a solid team. Brian Jordan, Ron Gant in his first year with the Cardinals. Gary Gaetti, who didn't have ear flaps. I remember him, the Rat. Dennis Eckersley was a Cardinal. Of course, you had Ozzie and Willie, and La Russa was there. Like, just some really good memories. And that sucks that he's gone way too soon at the age of 65. Was going to turn 66 on Christmas. Sad to report, but legend, no doubt. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. If you haven't already, give us a follow on Twitter, X at @LO_Cardinals, and at JD Sports Radio. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well, and help our channel and love for the Cardinals grow. You guys are the best fans in baseball for a reason, and if there's any updates on anything going on with the Cardinals, obviously we'll keep you locked in. I'm back, and we're gonna continue rocking and rolling in this offseason. So thank you for listening. We'll check you out soon.